Viewer discretion is advised.
Paul Allen is the second owner in the NBA to have made his money off of Microsoft, as he co-founded the endeavor with Bill Gates after Billy's daddy gave him a bunch of money to start his Whittle software company. He also owns the Seahawks and the Sounders. Trailblazers, you made a run to the finals, cast off Clyde the Glide, and watched him win 2 championships while you faded into obscurity. You did have a chance to get back to the finals in 2000, but you blew a 16-point second-half lead to the Lakers, shooting just 22% in the fourth quarter. Oh, and you used the #1 draft pick on Grandpa Greg Oden. You couldn't look at this dude and know he was 87 years old? Dear NBA Draft, we're really good at missing picks, like not drafting Kevin Durant or some guy named Michael Jordan. Sincerely, the Portland Trailblazers. The 1998 Pacers were really good, right up until they met the Bulls in the playoffs. But all of that aside, Indiana issued a severe beatdown on the Blazers, who were also pretty decent. Brian Grant was not on this night, going 0 for 6 from the field and missing 2 free throws and putting up no points in 30 minutes. As a team, they shot 24 for 72 and were bad from the stripe, shooting 8 for 19. The Blazers never scored more than 16 points in any quarter of the game. According to the team, Blaze the Trail Cat was a mountain lion born in the Oregon Cascades who came to Portland and was adopted by Blazers superstar Scottie Pippen in 2002. Ah yes, Blazers legend Scottie Pippen. Weed is legal in Oregon, so maybe the mascot doesn't do it, but you know at least a few heads in the crowd do his namesake.
Smoke weed every day.
Now we're getting into the dumb names, as Moda is a health insurance company in the Northwest. A unique feature listed as the SoundCloud, an acoustic ceiling enhancement that reverbs all the sound back into the arena. Interesting footnote, the Blazers currently have 3 sons of former NBA players on their roster: Seth Curry, Gary Payton Jr., and Gary Trent Jr. If there ever was a case of tampering that was not worth it, it was the wooing by Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum to add Carmelo Anthony. McCollum even put this on his Instagram. You got swept out the building by the Warriors, and your answer for that? Signed Carmelo Anthony. Something you will never live down, drafting Sam Bowie over Michael Jordan, or passing on KD for Greg Oden. I guess history repeats itself, just like when you were venturing out to the Pacific Northwest and you contract dysentery, aka Brandon Roy's injuries in liquid foam.
Blaze the Trail Cat, Portland. A great name and a pretty interesting idea, but he doesn't really look like a cat. Somewhere along the line, the execution of the idea didn't land. But hey, at least Damian Lillard is loyal, right? Rating 5 out of 10. Portland Trailblazers, Clyde Drexler. I came extremely close to choosing Damian Lillard, but I went with Drexler due to his teams having more postseason success. Their individual production is pretty similar, although Clyde led 2 Blazers teams to the NBA Finals and 3 Western Conference Finals appearances. Lillard has made just 1 Western Conference Finals during his time in Portland, not running from the grind, bro. If not for the bad boy Pistons and MJ's Bulls, Drexler would have brought a title to Portland. Another overlooked fact is how he never got to play with a prime Sabonis, who was stuck overseas. That would have made a dynamic duo for sure. But that's just another long list of what-ifs with the Blazer franchise, along with guys like Bill Walton, Sam Bowie, Sabonis, Greg Oden, and Brandon Roy. So sad. Portland Trailblazers, Sam Bowie. I feel bad for listing Bowie here, as he was actually a decent NBA player when healthy, but that's the thing. He was just another example of a long line of injury-prone Blazers centers who never lived up to their potential. But the real reason he makes this list is because, of course, he was picked ahead of Michael Jordan. People who say that's just hindsight don't know shit. Bowie literally missed 2 full seasons in college due to injuries, while MJ was the best player in college basketball. Sure, Portland had Clyde Drexler, but he'd only played 1 year at that point. Simply put, there's no excuse for Portland to take Bowie over MJ, not in 1984, not now, and not ever. Portland Trailblazers. Damian Lillard is not running from the grind, no offense to Urban Meyer. Did you know that Dame is loyal and not like other stars? What a fucking hero. In reality, Dame didn't deserve to make the NBA's 75th anniversary team. He's never played any defense, and although he has a few famous postseason buzzer beaters, his playoff career is pretty bad outside of a few series. The Blazers won't win any titles as long as he is their best player. At least Dame can say he's never been accused of rape like his head coach, though. Great job settling out of court, Chauncey. Totally innocent thing to do.
In 2000, the Portland Trail Blazers nearly made the NBA Finals. And while nearly stinks, Portland's rise had been quick, intimidating, and showed no signs of abating. In 1999, they made the Western Conference Finals. They were swept, but that's okay, they were building something. In 2000, it looked pretty complete. Up against the Kobe Shaq Lakers in the Western Conference Finals, this team wasn't getting swept. Mike Dunleavy, coach of the year in '99, orchestrated fluid lineups with tons of talent at his disposal. There was leading scorer Rasheed Wallace, equal parts talented, passionate, and volatile. Under the basket, you had Arvydas Sabonis, the passing big man, was 35 and still able to give Shaq the business. The backcourt saw 5'10" scoring point guard Damon Stoudemire split time with veteran Greg Anthony. New to the squad in 2000 were all-star vets Scottie Pippen, still trying to prove he could get a ring without Jordan, and Steve Smith, who became the Blazers' second leading scorer. Off the bench, you had fan favorite Brian Grant and the two young guns, Bonzi Wells and Jermaine O'Neal. It was president and GM Bob Whitsitt who built this group, with help from the finances of the owner, Microsoft co-founder, a billionaire, Paul Allen. And this group was winning Game 7 of the 2000 Western Conference Finals by 15 points with 10.5 minutes left. The finals were in their sights. But then LA went on a 15-0 run and won. In the fourth quarter, the Blazers missed 13 consecutive shots. But they weren't bad looks, it was just bad luck. Dunleavy said he wouldn't change a thing about that game, because 99 times out of 100, they'd win that game. Portland's near-finals berth in 2000 could have been the first stone in a path to a dominant future. If 99 out of 100 times they win that game, hey, they'll get them next time. That's math for you. Shaq said he expected the Blazers-Lakers rivalry to last his whole career. But, of course, the loss and failure to make it to the finals could be the first stone in a totally different path. One that leads straight to hell. While Dunleavy might have said there was nothing he'd change about that Game 7, Bob Whitsitt disagreed. To beat the Lakers in 2001, he wanted to get some players who could guard Shaq behind Sabonis. In a 3-team deal, Whitsitt traded beloved Brian Grant for Shawn Kemp. Kemp was more of a power forward than a true center, but don't worry, he had a history of handling all-star centers. More concerning was his recent attitude, the fact that he was pretty out of shape, and his price tag. But the Microsoft billionaire-funded team paid for him anyway. Whitsitt even got more Shaq protection, trading Jermaine O'Neal for Dale Davis. Davis was an all-star the prior season and, most importantly, played well against Shaq in the 2000 finals. Sure, Jermaine O'Neal had potential, but he barely got to play. The Blazers weren't looking to nurture young guys, they were looking to win a championship in 2001. Their slogan for the year was "One Team, One Dream." That dream, a ring, seemed very doable. The one team part might actually be a problem. With the highest payroll in the league, Whitsitt had assembled a team so deep their bench was filled with all-stars and career starters. Impressive on paper, but hard to see how everyone was going to harmoniously share playing time. But hey, Whitsitt, a professional general manager, wasn't concerned, so it's probably fine. And for the first half of the season, it was better than fine. At All-Star break, the Blazers were the best in the West. Sure, there wasn't enough playing time for everyone, and guys got mad. Career starters Kemp and Davis didn't adjust super well to coming off the bench. Steve Smith slumped and got replaced in the starting lineup by young Bonzi Wells, which he didn't care for. But here's the rub. When your team's dominating left and right, you can't really complain too much. You can, but nobody'll hear you over all the cheering. At the trade deadline, they were 38-17, and Whitsitt said he wasn't planning on making any moves. Why mess with success? Why mess with success, Whitsitt? He didn't make any trades, but he did add more former All-Stars to a team that already had too much talent. In late February, Pippen returned from injury, but Whitsitt decided to sign his temporary replacement for the rest of the year anyway. So Portland had too many small forwards. Stacey Augmon, who had played well in Pippen's absence, was shoved to the end of the bench. Then on March 5th, Whitsitt signed Rod Strickland. You know him, the consummate starting point guard who had been the Blazers' facilitator in the mid-90s. But what about their current starting point guard, Damon Stoudemire? Well, now he got to fear for his spot and also spiral about whether or not the front office believed in him, as did backup point guard Greg Anthony, who was injured but planned on coming back before there were two guys ahead of him. All the Blazers were on edge. Management had sent several messages that they should be. Dip in production, you could lose your starting spot. Get a little hurt, you could lose your backup spot. Someone else gets hurt and you play pretty well, we don't really care. Play great on the number one team in the West, your starting spot's still not safe. Portland, confidence shattered, lost 5 games in a row after Strickland was added. There was a palpable unease on the court. When you're losing, there's not much point in being humble and generous or even quiet about your playing time. On March 13th, while the Blazers were losing a 4th game in a row, Pippen was subbed out and said loud enough for the media to hear, "Dunleavy can't coach." Later in the game, Wells was taken out and was a little aggressive about it. Wallace would have gotten all the playing time he wanted if it weren't for his ongoing battle with the refs. So that's not helpful. By the start of April, the Blazers had fallen from 1st in the West to 6th, at which point they were like, hey, a team can suffer from more than just chemistry problems, and we'll prove it. April 5th, Shawn Kemp left the team and entered rehab for drug addiction. People felt sorry for Kemp and annoyed at Whitsitt for signing him in the first place. Then, the very next night, Bonzi Wells tore his ACL. His breakout had been one of the few bright spots left for this team, and fans couldn't even blame Whitsitt for this one. It was just sad. The Blazers decided to end the regular season with a bang. And by bang, I of course mean the sound of a big explosion that hurts your ears so much you puke. In the second to last game, Sabonis flopped and accidentally hit Wallace in the face. During a timeout, Wallace screamed at him and threw a towel in his face. It was a bad scene that got worse after the game, which was a loss if you can believe it. In the locker room, Wallace said he'd fuck up Sabonis, to which Sabonis simply said, "I will kill him." Dunleavy and Wallace got into it, and that escalated to a point where players were holding Wallace back, and Dunleavy, head coach, was yelling for them to let Wallace fight him. They didn't listen to the head coach in this instance, so everyone lived. Which is like the only nice thing I can say about the Blazers' 2001 season. Everyone lived! They finished 7th in the West, and now I have to talk about the playoffs. If you're a Blazers fan and this is going to be too painful, maybe find a tennis ball to squeeze during this next part, and also the rest of the video. Opening round, they faced the reigning champion Lakers, the team they were supposed to be rivals with for Shaq's whole career, the team that was supposed to be their only obstacle to a title. And they got swept, losing each game by double digits. This team was a shell of their former selves, and the shell had a dead hermit crab in it. About a week after the season, Dunleavy was fired, and despite fans' sentiment, Whitsitt got to stay and see if he could clean up the mess he'd made of the team. Before the 2002 season, the Blazers lost a few guys to free agency. Sabonis retired, and Steve Smith and Greg Anthony were traded. Whitsitt added Ruben Patterson. A few months earlier, Patterson entered a modified guilty plea to third-degree attempted rape of his family's nanny. Seattle waived him, nobody else was interested, except the Blazers. They wanted to give him another chance, or didn't care about his legal issues, or some combination of the two. They also drafted power forward Zach Randolph and hired first-time head coach Maurice Cheeks, hoping the new crew could help right the ship. A few months into the 2002 season, and the ship was just bobbing up and down around 500, not doing anything except making fans seasick. Wells and his repaired knee were a bright spot, until he gave Sports Illustrated a quote about Portland fans' lack of support, saying, "We're not really going to worry about what the hell the fans think of us. They don't really matter to us." Being as generous as I possibly can, this is a young man saying he wouldn't be distracted. He's just using the worst possible words to say that. Oh, wait, there's more. They can boo us every day, but they're still going to ask for our autographs if they see us on the street. That's why they're fans and we're NBA players. You know what? I don't feel like being generous anymore. Portland finished 6th in the West and again faced the Lakers in the first round. They were swept again, and games were characterized by some uncouth behavior. Oh, and also during the playoffs, Stoudemire was under investigation for felony marijuana possession. But hey, some of the playoff games were close, players and coaches weren't trying to fight each other, and Wallace only had 27 techs this year. The 0-2 season counts as an upswing. Still a far cry from 2000, but you have to say the glass is one drop full, not that's an empty glass, I don't want it, get it away from me. Okay, 2002-2003, how were the Blazers going to capitalize on this drop of momentum? First, they got Sabonis to come out of retirement. Then they re-signed Wells, who claimed a new attitude. Whitsitt did again stockpile talent with little regard for how they could possibly share playing time. But honestly, the playing time disputes in 03, of which there were a few, would be the least of the Blazers' problems. You may have heard of Portland's nickname, the Jailblazers. Well, the 2003 squad really leaned into that name. In early November, Bonzi Wells was suspended for spitting on Danny Ferry. Ferry may have provoked him with a racial slur, but that kinda got swept under the rug. In late November, Wallace and Stoudemire were pulled over for speeding, and the cops smelled weed. Wallace allegedly told the officer he would not find any weed because they had already smoked it all. Wallace was incorrect. 4 days later, Ruben Patterson, still on probation from the sexual assault case back in Seattle, was arrested for domestic assault. His wife later asked for the charges to be dropped. On December 20th, the Blazers defeated Golden State on a Sheed buzzer beater. All right, a moment for celebration. And I mean a literal moment, because look over here at Bonzi Wells and Chris Mills. And that turned into a huge, chaotic brawl. I think someone picked up a chair right here. Fans threw stuff at the Blazers, and when a fan threw gum and swung at Sheed, he tried to climb into the stands to sternly tell the guy that was inappropriate. Wells was suspended 2 games, and Wallace was fined $15K. Quick good behavior break at the start of the new year, probably trying to live up to their resolutions. But then on January 17th, Wallace threatened a ref. The ref had given Wallace a questionable tech during the game, and afterwards they crossed paths outside the stadium. The ref said Sheed raised his arms to hit him. Sheed said he was just talking. The ref was now infamous Tim Donaghy, but that didn't help Wallace's case at the time. Wallace was suspended for 7 games. Fans were fed up with the Blazers, and Pippen said they should be. Portland's reputation was in the toilet of a public restroom that had an out-of-order sign on the door but was heavily used anyway. But look at this. The Blazers were winning games. At All-Star break, they were 32-16, largely due to Cheeks making Pippen point guard. And hey, if all those incidents didn't hurt the win-loss record, why behave any differently? Don't want to jinx it. At the end of March, little-used rookie Quintel Woods was pulled over for speeding. The cops smelled and then found weed, which is a familiar story with a less popular player. It could blow over unless Woods did something memorable. Yep, there it is. 3 days later, Zach Randolph sucker-punched Ruben Patterson during practice, breaking his eye socket. Don't worry, the fight didn't escalate. Ruben couldn't retaliate because he was still on probation. If you're having trouble keeping track of all of Portland's 2003 indiscretions, just refer to this handy chart. One thing that was definitely easy to miss in all the chaos: Blazers finished 1 game better than last year. In the postseason, they fought back from 3-0 to force a Game 7 with Dallas. Randolph had a couple breakout performances, but they lost Game 7 and exited in the first round yet again. If Portland wanted to hold on to the fans they had left, something had to be done. 3 days after the 03 season ended, Whitsitt resigned as president and GM. His replacements insisted a new wind was blowing and made a pledge to fans that the salacious headlines were behind them. The pledge would be slightly harder to uphold because Portland lost 2 of their more mature guys, Pippen to free agency, Sabonis to a second and final retirement. But the pledge would be really hard to uphold because of players behaving the same old way. In the third game of the 2004 season, Bonzi Wells retaliated to hecklers with an obscene gesture. They don't say which one, so just pick your favorite. The team fined him as if to say, "See everyone, this year's gonna be different." In mid-November, Wells cursed out Cheeks when he was subbed out. The team took away his co-captainship and suspended him for 2 games. Wow, this year is gonna be different. A couple weeks later, Zach Randolph was arrested for driving under the influence of marijuana. He currently led the team in points and rebounds and was pretty much the guy keeping their heads above 500. So, new winds are blowing, etc., but management decided to hold off on disciplinary action. And then everyone got distracted because the next day, they traded the spitting, fighting, fan-alienating Bonzi Wells. And that was considered the right move for the long-term health of the team. Certainly not the immediate health, but fans didn't mind the record, they just wanted this new respectable team they were promised. In other words, they wanted to dump the fighting, tech-accumulating, ref-threatening Rasheed Wallace. When Portland traded Jeff McInnis, headlines were just, why didn't they trade Wallace? In February, it happened. They sent Sheed to Atlanta. GM Steve Patterson announced the dawn of a new era in Portland, claiming the faces of the Jailblazers were gone. In return for Wallace, they got 2 former All-Stars with stellar reputations. Portland finished 41-41. 2004 was their first non-winning season since 1989. But the organization didn't feel bad about it. This was a rebuilding season. The future looked promising and fans were happy. For a bit. In mid-October, Quintel Woods was under investigation for dogfighting and animal abuse, which is a new crime for the Blazers, but I don't think what GM Steve Patterson meant when he spoke of a new era. The Blazers suspended Woods indefinitely, and he eventually pled guilty to misdemeanor animal abuse, for which I hate him. Once the 2005 season got going, the team struggled with injuries and also winning. They fell 11 games below 500 in early March, and Cheeks was fired. New coach Kevin Pritchard surveyed the scene and pronounced the season dead. Instead, he used the remaining games to get some experience for their recently drafted young prospects, Travis Outlaw and Sebastian Telfair. Portland finished the 2005 season with their worst record since the early 70s. At least rookie point guard Sebastian Telfair developed nicely in those last months. He was someone to build around. What did that mean for free agent Damon Stoudemire? He wasn't going to stay where he wasn't wanted. And the last player from that 2000 team that was 10.5 minutes away from the NBA Finals was gone. But the hopes for that promising team died long ago, pretty much the very next season. And then the team just free fell until it flushed out every last player who'd once sparked hope. What did we learn along the way down? Too much talent can actually be a bad thing, as chemistry is very delicate. We learned that reputation matters to fans, and fans matter to an organization. Your rep can get you traded. And hopefully we learn not to speed if we're smoking pot in the car. Twice they got caught that way. The infighting and indiscretions certainly made for a spectacle, but let's take a moment to remember just how good the Blazers were before all that unsavory business took over. They were title contenders, title favorites to some, expected to rival the Lakers throughout the 2000s, the same Lakers who three-peated in 2000, 01, and 02. The 2000 Blazers were a stacked team, balanced perfectly for a moment in time. That stack just proved too delicate to last.